to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester podcast. We are a community built on love, hope, and justice. Our goal is to inspire people to take on the challenges of a changing world. Each week we'll bring you a reflection from our minister, the Reverend Aaron Payson, recorded during our Sunday service. Maybe it'll move you, challenge your thinking, or even stir up a little righteous indignation. That's all welcome here. Thanks for listening.
This Sunday, we are delighted to welcome the Reverend Michael Hall back to the pulpit of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester. Michael has been a Unitarian Universalist minister for the past 13 years and currently serves our congregation in Franklin, New Hampshire. We're delighted that Michael joined us on November 9th, 2025.
The sermon today is called Just Be Yourself. The hardest blow to absorb is not always the one that hits on truth, but the one that challenges it. Many years ago, when I was still preparing to enter ministry, I took part in my first mock. Mocks were the familiar name given to the practice interviews that ministerial candidates were advised to arrange to simulate what their meeting with the MFC, dun dun dun, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, will be like. The MFC determines whether you are ready to be credentialed as a Unitarian Universalist minister. Hopefully, your mock interview would create something similar to what you would go through at the real interview and help you identify weaknesses in the sermon you had chosen to preach to the MFC. The mock panel's job was to point out any holes in your preparation for the rigorous hour-long interview with the MFC, which in my case was scheduled for September 23rd, 2011. The mock team also attempted to sound your knowledge of the 15, or was it 16, could be now 18 areas of academic and professional competence in which a Unitarian Universalist minister at that time was expected to be proficient and practiced. At that time, a candidate for our ministry could expect questions on a variety of subjects ranging from Hebrew scriptures to social ethics to ministry with youth and young adults to leadership and organization, pastoral care, and, well, we'll leave it at that for now. The Ministerial Fellowship Committee itself also develops questions based on reams of personal reflections, evaluations, psychological tests, transcripts, your theology of nearly everything under the sun, and background checks that it collects over the course of an individual's pursuit of Unitarian Universalist ministry. For a potential minister, the MFC interview could be either the last hurdle cleared on the way to ordination and settlement in a church, or the impenetrable wall barring the way. So the mock was, and I imagine still is, very important, to say the least. Considering its importance, I set up two mocks. The first was on September 1st. At the conclusion of my first mock, I was savaged. The interview team I had enlisted was comprised of good friends who I chose particularly for their candor, not for their reticence or unmitigated sweetness. And they delivered. They had several criticisms of my performance. It wasn't that they had nothing good to say. In several parts of the interview, the team thought I did great, but they hated my sermon and suggested I not use it at all. They corrected a few factual errors and admonished me to watch my tone and avoid any flippancy, especially on the day of the real interview in Boston. But the worst criticism of all was when they said I wasn't authentic. They thought I was being pedantic and smart-alecky. They said that I was behaving like I had to prove I belonged in the ministry rather than just being the guy who did belong. I wasn't being true to the person they knew and loved, the joyful, honest Michael, whose ministry they already believed in. They questioned whether I believed in me or not. And when they saw how worried and concerned I was about their comments, they said, if the Michael we know shows up for the MFC interview on September 23rd, he'll have no problem. Just be yourself. At that moment, I was convinced that the team was right, that in the interview I hadn't been true to myself. I was also overwhelmed by the fear that if I were capable of not being myself at a fake interview, who's to say the real me would show up for the real interview with the MFC? I went into a funk. I stopped studying. I paced, I prayed, I indulged my legendary competence in ice cream eating. I mulled my fate and ruminated on my predicament. I stroked my beard and shook my head a lot. Why hadn't I chosen a career in architecture or cosmetology? How could I mess this up? I felt as though I had lost myself entirely. Or perhaps I didn't know myself at all. Ben Franklin once said that there are three extremely hard things: steel, diamonds, and to know oneself. I wondered if in 45 years I had even made a dent in knowing who I was. Sometimes life whips around like the tail of a kite, and we encounter situations that surprise, deflate, and baffle us. Right now, any one of us might find ourselves in the proverbial deep end of the pool, just trying to keep our nose above the water. We may find ourselves beyond all natural abilities and our comfort zone. We hear the persistent tick, tick, tick of our days speeding by ever so quickly. We may feel we haven't time to follow a call, to play at life, or to learn new skills. As I did in the mock interview, we may freeze up at the wrong time, struggling to integrate life's changes and constant challenges. Doubts may arise. Things don't seem to come naturally or easily anymore, and it's hard to just be yourself. Thankfully, in my case, after some quality time spent whining and sighing and staring ruefully into space, I began to wonder just what in the name of Clara Barton was my mock interview team talking about? What exactly was this self that I was supposed to be when I was being myself? How could I be so sure they knew what they were talking about? And if they didn't, wouldn't that self be merely a caricature, drawn from the best things that my good friends and mentors saw in me when they are busy overlooking my awkwardness and folly? How could anything that I am or do be alien to me? I may be joyful and honest and loved, and that's fine, but don't try to deny myself its flaws. and insecurities. Would I be myself without my beautiful smart aleckiness? Would I be myself without my tiresome pedantry, my passionate chatter, my whining, and, beard stroking? Could I dismiss the precocious inner child who sometimes shows up wanting to prove to everybody near and far just how smart, talented, and lovable he is? Perhaps you feel similarly that our true dignity and worth is inherent only in the fullness of our being. The search for truth and meaning yield neither unless we bring our whole, crazy, beautiful, imperfect, dazzlingly perceptive, and entirely unaware humanity to bear. For me, the self began to seem an illusory thing, a construction based on experience and the rickety persistence of memory. The self is not to be found anywhere, and yet we are always entire at any time we are alive, or in any of the roles we adopt over time. The woman is more than the little girl, student, spouse, or a co-worker that she was, and yet, like Emerson's roses, she is wholly alive in every point of her life. The self is only a shadow puppet with which we try to cover our naked being. Buddhists don't believe in the idea of an independent self. They think of a person as a collection formed from what are called the 5 skandhas, or aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The skandhas themselves are empty vessels, principles underlying all human appearance and passing away. According to one source I read in preparing this sermon, it seems more that the self is an emergent phenomenon arising from the application of complex interpretive schemes to perception. Complex interpretive schemes to our playing with the idea of self rather than being fully ourselves. It's a product of mental process and manipulation. It's the thinking thing. Our lives, however, are living things. When I was a kid, I played a lot of baseball on the grassy fields and sandlots of Rock Village, where I grew up, down in Middleborough. We played all the time, boys and girls, first graders and teenagers, one and all, from the last day of winter well into September. When we didn't have enough people, we played pickle or catch. When it was wet, we got soaked, and our baseballs became sodden and heavy. When our wooden bats broke, we clenched them with a nail, taped them up, and played on. By the time I got anywhere near, thank goodness, a proper ball field with chalk lines and bleachers, before I ever put on a uniform or listened to a pep talk from an adult coach, I had played a lot of baseball. I probably had some natural talent, but I had already worked so hard and played so much that the game just seemed to come naturally. That a ball popping up in my glove and then breaking my nose, well, that's part of the game. When I walked up to the plate, I didn't think about what I was going to do, and I didn't think of, thank goodness they didn't have all that hoo-ha that modern-day coaches are sometimes trying to tell 12-year-olds. When I came back, when I walked up to the plate, I didn't think about what I was doing. I didn't worry about keeping my hands back. I didn't think about weight transfer. or the many other subtleties involved in trying to hit a moving sphere with a wooden cylinder. I didn't care what the pitcher was going to do. I kept it very simple. If I see a ball I can hit, I'm giving it a ride. I was confident, even a little cocky. The best coaching advice I ever received, however, was just be yourself up there. That's just what I did. I was playing hard, and having fun. Some say we are human beings, not human doings. By saying this, they are emphasizing that as humans, our purpose isn't to be constantly busy. How y'all doing with that one? But present in the various aspects and enjoyments of life. I've come to think that instead we are human humans transforming. How about that? Moving through the stages of life, learning new things that update our old ways of being in the world. We use ideas like the illusion of self to impress our love love of constancy and need for consistency amid a flux and happenstance of life. We choose our character and behaviors through practicing life, playing hard, and having fun. We become what we are through trial and error. Sometimes flat-out failure unlocks a door to resources we never knew we had, and successes we would otherwise never have reached. From time to time, we pause in the middle of a growth period, and we fret, and we dream, and we listen to the wind and the trees and what some of us call our calling. Then we move on, forward, upward, and out of our old selves. We can only be ourselves in live action time through infinite choices made at rapid speed in an ever-changing world. In time, I knew exactly what my mock team meant when they said, just be yourself. They meant, keep your heart and your head connected, but let your heart run the show. They meant to be the one you cannot shake, the one you want to be, the one you are in the motion of living into being, not the self you revert to when you're doubted. When you're doubting, you know what you are and who you want to be. And they meant be true to yourself always, in doubt, in glory, and in growth. And that's who I brought to see the MFC. And now, 14 years later, I bring the lesson of it to you today. It is a blessing to be ourselves at any moment. The practice of faith is trust that we won't be lost in our own struggle, at least not for long, lost in this struggle for authenticity. But instead, we find ourselves within the struggle, amid the joys and sorrows of being alive, the search for truth and justice. We just try to practice the love that we preach and strive to personify. In this faith, we trust our doubts will teach us something important, and we question our certainty at all the while, stringing together a life that is whole, like a necklace, beautiful, original, organic, and yes, authentic. So let it be as it should be.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're just crossing our path, either new to this congregation or curious about Unitarian Universalism, check out our website, UUCWorcester.org. You'll find lots of information there about our beliefs, the 8 guiding principles, religious exploration for children and adults, our social action initiatives, and the many groups we offer to help people connect and have fun. And consider joining us, in person or online, on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We'd love to meet you.